My name is Mark Evans, and I'm 22 years old. I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm currently a junior at the University of Texas, majoring in computer science. I've always been a pretty average guy, introverted but friendly, and not the type to seek out drama or trouble. I guess you could say I've lived a pretty quiet life. But what happened last year still haunts me, and I'm sharing this because I can't keep it bottled up anymore. It started when I decided to move out of the dorms. Living with 3 roommates in a cramped, noisy dorm was draining me. I wanted my own space, a place where I could focus on my studies without constant distractions. I started browsing apartment listings online and found a 1-bedroom unit in a small, older complex just a few blocks from campus. The rent was surprisingly affordable, almost too good to be true. The building wasn't fancy, but it had a certain charm. The landlord, Mr. Griffin, was an elderly man who seemed kind, but a bit scatterbrained. He told me the previous tenant had moved out unexpectedly, leaving most of the furniture behind. He also said the apartment had been vacant for a few months, which explained the low rent. When I first stepped inside the unit, it felt perfect. It had a cozy living room, a small kitchen, and a single bedroom with an attached bathroom. The furniture left behind was in decent shape: a couch, a coffee table, a bed frame with a mattress, and even some kitchenware. The place smelled faintly of mildew, but I figured a good cleaning would fix that. I moved in the following week. For the first few days, everything was great. I loved the silence and solitude. It felt amazing to finally have a space to call my own. I spent my days at school and my evenings relaxing, catching up on assignments, or watching Netflix. But then, little things started to bother me. The first thing I noticed was that certain items seemed to be misplaced. At first, I thought I was just being forgetful. For example, one morning I found my phone charger on the kitchen counter instead of the nightstand where I always left it. Another time, my backpack, which I had placed by the door, was sitting on the couch when I came home. I told myself I was just distracted or tired. Then, I started hearing noises. It was subtle at first, soft creaks and muffled thuds that I chalked up to the old building settling. But over time, the sounds became harder to ignore. I'd be lying in bed at night and hear what sounded like footsteps in the living room. Sometimes it was a faint tapping, like someone was lightly drumming their fingers against the wall. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was my upstairs neighbor, or maybe sound just traveled strangely through the building. But one night, something happened that I couldn't explain. I had been studying late, and it was around 1 a.m. when I finally decided to call it a night. I turned off my desk lamp and crawled into bed, pulling the covers over me. As I lay there in the dark, trying to fall asleep, I heard a noise that made my blood run cold. It was the sound of breathing. It wasn't mine. It was too slow and deep. It seemed to be coming from the corner of my bedroom near the closet. I froze, holding my breath, straining to listen. The sound continued, steady and rhythmic, like someone was standing just a few feet away from me. I didn't dare move. My mind raced, trying to come up with a logical explanation. Was it possible the sound was coming from outside? Maybe a neighbor's TV or a ventilation duct. But it sounded so close, and the more I listened, the more certain I became that it was coming from inside my room. After what felt like an eternity, the breathing stopped. I waited for a long time before I finally gathered the courage to turn on a light. I grabbed my phone and scanned the room, my hands trembling. There was no one there. The closet door was slightly ajar, though. I was sure I had closed it earlier. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, I convinced myself it had been my imagination or some kind of auditory hallucination. Maybe I was just overtired. I tried to brush it off, but deep down, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something wasn't right. A few days later, I found the half-eaten sandwich in the fridge that I didn't remember putting there. I thought maybe I had forgotten about it, but the thing is, I don't even like turkey sandwiches. That's when I started to think that maybe I wasn't alone in the apartment after all. After finding the half-eaten sandwich, I couldn't focus on anything else. It felt like my entire sense of security had been ripped away. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, that I had eaten the sandwich and forgotten about it, but the unease in my gut told me otherwise. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about all the strange things that had been happening. The misplaced items, the noises, the breathing, and now the sandwich. The puzzle pieces didn't fit together neatly, but they all pointed to one horrifying possibility. I wasn't living alone. I decided to take action. I locked my bedroom door before going to bed, something I had never done before. I also placed my chair in front of the door, creating a makeshift barricade. It felt ridiculous, but it was the only way I could calm my nerves enough to sleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up to a soft creaking sound. My heart raced as I sat up in bed, straining to hear. It was coming from outside my room, near the kitchen. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, my hands trembling as I pointed it toward the door. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. There was no response, but the creaking stopped. I sat there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I mustered the courage to get out of bed. I moved the chair away from the door as quietly as I could and unlocked it. My heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Slowly, I opened the door and peered into the dark hallway. The apartment was silent. I stepped out cautiously, sweeping my flashlight across the living room and kitchen. Nothing seemed out of place, but the air felt heavy, like I was being washed. I checked every corner of the apartment, even inside the cabinets and under the furniture. Nothing. I eventually went back to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. The next morning, I decided to install a small security camera in the living room. I found a cheap one online that connected to my phone and set it up facing the main area of the apartment. If someone, or something, was sneaking around while I wasn't looking, I wanted proof. For the next 2 days, nothing happened. The footage showed only me going about my day, which gave me a bit of relief. Maybe I had been overthinking everything after all. But on the third night, the camera caught something. I had been out late, studying at the library, and didn't get home until after midnight. As usual, I locked my bedroom door and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up and checked the camera footage out of habit. At first, everything looked normal. The living room was empty, and there was no movement. But as I fast-forwarded through the footage, my stomach dropped. At 2:37 a.m., the camera picked up movement. A shadowy figure emerged from the hallway leading to my bedroom. It was hard to make out details, but it was definitely a person, a man, by the looks of it. He moved slowly and deliberately, walking toward the kitchen. He opened the fridge, took out a bottle of water, and drank from it. Then, he quietly walked back down the hallway and out of frame. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. I replayed the footage over and over, hoping I had imagined it, but it was real. Someone had been in my apartment, walking around in the middle of the night while I was asleep. I didn't know what to do. Calling the police felt like the obvious choice, but what would I tell them? That a blurry figure had been caught on my cheap security camera? I didn't even know how this person had gotten in. The front door was always locked, and the windows had bars on them. The only other explanation was that they were already inside. That thought sent a chill down my spine. I remembered the slightly ajar closet door, the misplaced items, and the sandwich I didn't eat. It all made sense now, but the realization was horrifying. Someone had been living in my apartment, hiding in the shadows while I went about my life. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in my room with the door locked and my chair pressed against it. I kept my phone in my hand, ready to call for help at the first sign of danger. Every little noise made me jump, and I found myself staring at the closet, half expecting someone to burst out of it. By morning, I had made up my mind. I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. I packed a bag with my essentials and called my friend Jake, asking if I could crash at his place for a few days. Jake didn't ask too many questions, but I could hear the concern in his voice. Before leaving, I decided to check one last thing. I opened the closet door, bracing myself for whatever I might find. The closet was empty, but something caught my eye. A small, loose panel at the back. It looked like it could be moved. My hands shook as I pulled the panel away, revealing a dark, narrow crawl space. The smell that hit me was nauseating, a mix of sweat, mildew, and something worse. I shone my flashlight inside and saw a crumpled blanket, a few empty food wrappers, and a water bottle. Someone had been living in my walls. Finding the crawl space confirmed my worst fear. Someone had been living in my apartment, hiding in the walls. My stomach churned as I stared at the makeshift bed and the scattered trash inside the narrow space. The thought that someone had been so close to me, watching me, walking around while I slept, was almost too much to handle. I slammed the panel back into place and grabbed my bag. I was ready to leave for good, but I knew I couldn't just walk away without doing something. I called the police. When the officers arrived, I told them everything. The noises, the misplaced items, the camera footage, and the crawl space. They didn't seem surprised, which made me think they had seen this kind of thing before. One officer, a woman named Officer Hart, stayed with me while the others searched the apartment. "Don't worry," she said, her tone calm but firm. "We'll figure out what's going on." I stood by the door, clutching my bag tightly as they inspected the crawl space. When one officer crawled inside with a flashlight, I held my breath. Minutes passed, and then he called out, "It's clear, but there's definitely been someone in here." They pulled out the blanket, wrappers, and water bottle as evidence. But there was no sign of whoever had been living there. "Do you have any idea how they might have gotten in?" Officer Hart asked. I shook my head. "The door's always locked, and the windows have bars. I don't understand how it's possible." The officers checked every possible entry point, but everything was secure. The only explanation was that whoever had been living there had access to the apartment before I moved in. Maybe they had a key or knew a way in through the walls. The landlord, Mr. Griffin, was called in to explain. When he arrived, he looked genuinely shocked and claimed he had no idea anyone else could have been in the unit. But when the police pressed him, he admitted something that made my blood run cold. The previous tenant left in a hurry, he said, wringing his hands nervously. She complained about strange noises and said she didn't feel safe. I thought she was just being paranoid. "Why didn't you tell me that?" I demanded, anger and fear bubbling up inside me. "I didn't think it was important," he stammered. "I thought she was imagining things." The police gave him a stern lecture, but there wasn't much they could do without catching the person responsible. They advised me to stay somewhere else until I could move out permanently. I didn't need convincing. I stayed with my friend Jake for a few days while I searched for a new place. During that time, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The thought of someone watching me, creeping around in the dark, made my skin crawl. Even at Jake's place, I found myself double-checking locks and looking over my shoulder. But the story didn't end there. A week after I moved out, I got a call from Officer Hart. They had caught someone. The man was found hiding in another unit in the same building. He was homeless and had been sneaking into vacant apartments to live undetected. When they searched his belongings, they found items that had gone missing from my apartment. An old hoodie, a mug, even my spare phone charger. I thought I'd feel relief knowing he was caught, but instead, I felt sick. He had been so close, blending into the walls of my life without me even realizing it. I moved into a new apartment after that, one with better security and no strange crawl spaces. But I haven't been the same since. I still hear noises at night, and every creak or thud sends my heart racing. I know it's just my paranoia, but sometimes I wonder, What if I wasn't the only person he watched? What if there's someone else out there right now living the same nightmare?